Okay, today's topic of presentation is enteral and parenteral nutrition. Enteral and parenteral nutrition. Okay, what is nutrition? The process by which organism take and utilize the food material, that is nutrition. So there are two types of nutrition. One is enteral nutrition, that is given by the through Ralph's tube or feeding jejunostomy or feeding gastrostomy, as well as another is total parenteral nutrition. What is principle of nutrition therapy? Principle of nutrition therapy is depend upon the type of nutrition. See, awareness of malnutrition is basic because it increases the morbidity and mortality. Enteral route of nutrition is always preferred over the parenteral route of nutrition. Overfeeding should by any means. Timing and type of nutrition are important. And nutritional therapy prevents protein wasting. Immunomodulators are very useful. Example, glutamine is very non-essential amino acid which is helpful in cell proliferation during tissue repair. What is the advantage of enteral nutrition over parenteral nutrition? It preserves the gut integrity, possibly decreases the bacterial translocation, preserves immunological function of the gastrointestinal tract, fewer infectious complications. It is safer, cost-effective, and enteral nutrition is the only likely to benefit nutritionally dependent patient or those at risk of the becoming depleted. What is indication of enteral nutrition? It is malnourished patient who is not taken diet for more than 5 to 7 days. A normally nourished patient who cannot eat for more than 5 to 7 days. An adaptive phase of short bowel syndrome after massive bowel resection and increased need that cannot be met through the oral intake. Example is burns and trauma. What is contraindication of enteral nutrition? Inability to gain access, hemodynamical instability, high output proximal fistula, intractable vomiting or diarrhea, paralytic ileus, intestinal obstruction, and severe GI bleed. What is expected need is less than 5 to 7 days. It is a relative contraindication for enteral nutrition. What is excess of enteral nutrition? Up to 4 to 6 weeks, then nasogastrostomy or nasojejunal tube placement is preferred. Beyond 4 to 6 weeks with the life expectancy more than 3 months, percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy or percutaneous endoscopic jejunostomy or needle jejunostomy is preferred. What is indication of enteral tube feeding? Indication for feeding and examples as unconscious patient like head injury, ventilated patient, swallowing disorder like post-cardiovascular accident, multiple sclerosis, motor neuron disease, physiological anorexia, liver disease, particularly with ascites, upper GI obstruction, esophageal stricture, post-corrosive, partial intestinal failure, post-operative ileus, increased nutritional requirement, cystic fibrosis, and chronic renal failure, and psychological problems. Routes of enteral nutrition, that is nasogastric feeding. It is indication of nasogastric feeding is short-term feeding is required, intact gag reflex, gastric function is not compromised, and low risk of aspiration. These are the common indication for nasogastric feeding. The nasogastric tube, it should be 5 to 8 French tubes, and large bore PVC tubes should not be preferred because they irritate the nose and esophagus and increase the risk of gastric reflux and aspiration. Polyurethane and silicone tubes, and the position of the tip should be confirmed before starting of nasogastric feeding. Routes of enteral nutrition. Then another is nasojejunal feeding. Jejunal feeding may be indicated if there are problem of gastric reflux or delayed gastric emptying, and it should also be used in unconscious patients who have to be nursed flat. Fine bore tube 6 to 10 French gauze should be preferred. To pass the pylorus is difficult with nasojejunal tube. So nasojejunal tube should be preferred either during laparoscopically and endoscopically. Nasogastric tube versus nasojejunal tube. No difference in the mortality, morbidity between their route of placement and feeding. In today's era, only indication of nasojejunal tube is gastric intolerance. The contraindication of nasogastric and nasojejunal tube is esophageal obstruction, recent upper GI tract surgery, faciomexillary fracture, and the following are the relative contraindications like severe GERD, coagulopathy, and variceal bleed. Method of feeding enterotomies, gastrostomy and jejunostomy. Gastrostomy is surgically placed like Stam's gastrostomy and Genevieve's gastrostomy. Endoscopically placed percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy, whereas jejunostomy is needle jejunostomy and Witzel jejunostomy. Stam's temporary gastrostomy is most commonly performed before the advantage of percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy Two layers of purse-string sutures are placed around the catheter and is tied gently. The catheter should be snugly fitting with the seromuscular layer of the stomach. In Witzel type of gastrostomy, a subserosal tunnel should be made, so there will be less chances of leak following temporary gastrostomy. Janvas mucus-lined permanent gastrostomy. It is used when there is risk of removal of gastrostomy tube in unconscious patient, and in this technique, mucosal entire thickness tunnel in the stomach is formed in the wall, so there will be less chances of displacement of the tube. Then Caders and temporary gastrostomy. In this serosal line temporary type, similar to stamps, but instead of purse-string sutures, seromuscular interrupted sutures are placed from stomach to peritoneal surface, so there will be less chances of displacement and less chances of leak. Percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy, that is invented by the Ponsky and Gardner. Antibiotic should be started 6 hours before and can be done under general anesthesia and local anesthesia, but it is contraindication in massive ascites, abdominal sepsis, inability to intubate esophagus and transilluminate the stomach, systemic sepsis, and life expectancy is less than 3 months. This is push and pull technique. There are two techniques that is known as push and pull technique. This is the common example of, or the figure showing the procedure of percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy. Postoperative care, feeding should be started after 12 to 24 hours. Monitoring of the patient, percutaneous endoscopic site dressing at the 12 and 24 hours. Removal of the PEG should be minimally after 14 to 21 days. So there will be development of the fibrous tract. Problem in the gastrostomy tube, that is leak of the gastrostomy tube, leads to gastric fistula, trauma to other organs, infection, aspiration, pneumonia, diarrhea, bloating, abdominal cramps, displacement, and blockage of the gastrostomy tube. Jejunostomy. This is commonly performed surgical enterostomy for enteral nutrition. It can be used in patients who have had a gastrectomy, when stomach to be used for surgery later on, like in carcinoma of esophagus. Usually placed at the time of other surgery, although laparoscopic placement has also been described. Needle jejunostomy. This is 14 to 16 French needle, gauze needle, used to create a subserosal tunnel of 30 to 40 centimeter length, distal to ligament of Treitz. Its tip should be directed into jejunal lumen. 9 French catheter inserted over the needle and advanced 30 to 40 centimeter distally. Needle is to be removed and loop of jejunum is anchored to the anterior abdominal wall. That is known as needle jejunostomy. Witzel's technique. Here 30 to 40 centimeter distal to Regis junction, jejunostomy is placed and there is subserosal tunnel should be made. So there will be least chances of displacement of the tube as well as less chances of leaking from the pericatheter. Administration of feeding protocol. Feeding should be started 24 to 48 hours. Delivery of the feeding protocol depends upon the patient's condition and age of the patient. Enteral route, either in the gastrostomy or jejunostomy, and nutritional requirements and GI status. Isotonic formula is always preferred over the hypertonic and hypotonic formulas. Dilutic formulas should be avoided because they increase the risk of microbial contamination. Administration surgery strategy. It should be bolus, intermittent, and continuous. Bolus feeding, infusion up to 500 ml of enteral formula into stomach every 15 minutes by gravity or by large bore syringe, that is known as bolus feeding. Continuous feeding, here the enteral feeding is administered through pump or gravity, usually over 24 hours continuously. Intermittent feeding, the enteral formula administered at the specified times throughout the day, generally in smaller volume and at slower rate than bolus feeding, but in larger volume and faster rate than continuous drip feeding. Typically 200 to 300 ml is given over 30 to 60 minutes in 4 to 6 hours. There is open system and closed system. The open system is the product is delivered through the feeding bag and it allows modulator to add proteins and fibers to feeding formulas. They increase the nursing time but increase the risk of contamination. Closed system, it contains sterile until used for feeding. It can be used for continuous and bolus delivery. No adding of fibers, proteins and vitamins. Less nursing time, less risk of contamination, and it is more expensive. Complication of enteral nutrition. It feeding mechanical complication includes feeding tube displacement, nasal irritation, skin irritation, excoriation at the enterostomy site because of leak of the gastrointestinal juices. GI complications, diarrhea, constipation, gastric distension, gastric residues, and delayed gastric emptying, nausea and vomiting. Metabolic complications, fluid and electrolyte imbalance, glucose, magnesium and phosphate imbalance. What is refeeding syndrome? It is refeeding when the marginally body nutrient stores stress depleted patient those who have been unfed for 7 to 10 days, person with anorexia nervosa, chronic alcoholism and weight loss. Presentation is hypokalemia, hypophosphatemia, hypomagnesemia, cardiac arrhythmia, heart failure and acute respiratory failure. Treatment of the refeeding syndrome is correct electrolyte imbalance, administer volume and energy slowly, monitoring of the patient and avoid overfeeding. Summary of the enteral nutrition is, malnutrition is highly prevalent in developing countries like India. Knowledge of the enteral nutrition is essential for treating personal, individualized feeding methods, protocols. Each institution should define an ongoing quality control process for enteral nutrition formula preparation, distribution, storage, handling and administration. Now comes to next topic is total parental nutrition. Parental nutrition is a method of feeding in a patient by infusing a mixture of all necessary nutrients in form of pre-digested into circulatory system, thus bypassing the GIT. It is also referred as intravenous nutrition, parenteral alimentation and artificial nutrition. The golden rule of nutrition, the GERD should always be preferred route of nutrient administration. That means enteral nutrition is always preferred over parenteral nutrition. Parenteral nutrition is indicated generally when there is severe gastrointestinal dysfunction in patient who cannot take sufficient food or feeding formulas by the enteral route. Ideally, the venous line should be used exclusively for parenteral nutrition. The subclavian vein is always preferred over the jugular vein, and a peripherally inserted catheter through the peripherally inserted central line, that is also a route of our administration, but subclavian vein is always preferred. What is the indication of parenteral nutrition? In well-nourished adults, 7 to 10 days of starvation with conventional intravenous support, usually with 5% dextrose solution, is generally accepted. If the period of starvation is to be extended beyond the 7 to 10 days, the patient is not well nourished. Total parenteral nutrition is necessary to prevent the potential complication of malnutrition. Indication of total parenteral malnutrition: bowel injury, bowel surgery, major trauma, burns, bowel disease like obstructions and fistulas, severe malnutrition, nutritionally preparation prior to major surgeries, and malabsorption and bowel cancers. Nutritional requirement: energy in the form of glucose and lipids, amino acids, includes nitrogen, water and electrolytes, vitamins and trace elements. Energy, the basal energy requirement are function of the individual weight, age, gender, activity level and disease process. However, this requirement may be greater in the patient with injury or infection. Energy sources. Glucose is the main energy source of the body. The most common source of parenteral energy supply is glucose. It is being readily metabolized in most patients, provide the obligatory needs for the substrate, thus reducing the gluconeogenesis and sparing the endogenous protein. 1 gram of glucose gives 4 kilocalories. Most of stable patients tolerate rate of 4 to 5 mg per kg per minute, but insulin resistance is critically ill patients may lead to hyperglycemia even at this rate also. So insulin should be incorporated according to the blood sugar level. Fat metabolism, energy source, another energy source is lipid. Fat mobilization is a major source of response to stress and infection. Lipid are also a source for the essential fatty acids, which are the building block for many of the hormones involved in the inflammatory process, as well as the hormone regulating the other body function. Ideally, energies from the fat should not exceed 40% of the total body weight. Usually 20 to 30% requirement of the energy should be provided with the lipids. Nitrogen, protein or amino acids. The building block of the protein is the functional and structural component of the body. So fulfilling patient's caloric need with non-protein calories, fat and glucose is essential. Protein requirement for most of the healthy individual is 0.8 gram per kg per day. In major trauma or burns is more than infection or after surgery. And parenteral amino acid solution provide all known essential amino acids. Available amino acid preparations are 3.5 to 15%. I contain 3.5 to 15 gram of protein or amino acids per 100 ml of solution. Requirements, fluid and electrolytes. Nutrient requirements and requirements in kg per day. Water should be 20 to 40 ml per kg per day. Sodium should be 0.5 to 1.0 millimole per kg per day. Potassium should be 0.5 to 1.0 millimole per kg per day. Magnesium should be 0.1 to 0.2 millimole. Calcium should be 0.05 to 0.15 millimole per kg per day, and a phosphate 0.2 to 0.5 millimole per kg per day. Chloride and acetate. So as to maintain acid-base balance, normally 0.5 millimole per for chloride and 0.1 milliequivalent for acetate is required. Normalization of acid-base balance is a priority, and constant concern is the management of critical ill patient. Most electrolytes can be safely added to the parenteral amino acid and dextrose solution. Sodium bicarbonate in high concentration will tend to generate carbon dioxide at the acidic pH of the amino acid or glucose mix. Vitamins. These requirements are usually met when standard volumes of nutrient mix are provided. Increased amount of vitamins are usually provided to severely ill patient. Most preparations does not include vitamin K, which can be included according to the patient coagulation status. Trace minerals. These are essential component of the parenteral nutrition regimen. A multi-element solution is available commercially and can be supplemented with individual minerals. It may be toxic at high doses, so should be calculated according to the patient weight and age. Iron is excluded as it alters stability of other ingredients, so it is given by separate injection, intravenous or intramuscular if needed. Policy to monitor efficacy: electrolyte sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, phosphate, acid base, blood sugar, body weight in hemoglobin. To monitor the complication of the parenteral nutrition, ALT, AST, bilirubin, blood urea nitrogen, total proteins and fractions is required. Generally, input and output chart of the daily and detection of infection, clinically activity, temperature, symptoms, WBC count for total and differential, and cultures, blood cultures usually. Complication of TPN: sepsis, pneumothorax while placement of the catheter, air embolism, clotted catheter lines, catheter displacement, fluid overload, hyperglycemia and rebound hypoglycemia, and electrolyte imbalance. Catheter related complications are which can be localized or systemic: skin, portal, malnutrition and poor immunity. Symptoms like fever with chills and drainage of pus around the catheter entrance site, leukocytosis, positive culture blood and catheter tip. Treatment is exclusion of other causes of fever and short course of antibacterial or antifungal therapy according to culture and sensitivity. And catheter removed may be required, and catheter should be inserted at other sites. Catheter sepsis continued. Prevention is a rigorous program of catheter care. Only intravenous nutrition solutions are administered through the catheter. No blood may be withdrawn or from the catheter. Catheter disinfection and redressing at 2 to 3 times weekly. The entrance site is inspected for signs of inflammation and infection daily. Culture is to be taken from the tip of the catheter whenever it is removed. Other catheter related complications are thromboembolism, pneumothorax, vein or artery perforation and supravena cava thrombosis. The metabolic complication of TP cause of withdrawal of total parenteral nutrition, hyperglycemia and elevated blood sugar associated with infusion of excess of glucose in the feeding solution, or the diabetic-like status in the patient associated with many critical illnesses. It can result in an osmotic diuresis, abnormal loss of body fluid via kidney, dehydration and hyperosmolar coma. Treatment is to decrease the amount of infused glucose less than 4 mg per kg per minute, or insulin can be administered either subcutaneously, injection or incorporation in the infusion bag. Metabolic complications: hypertriglyceridemia, high triglyceride levels associated with excess of infusion of fat emulsion. Infusion of both glucose and fat emulsion in excess may result in pulmonary insufficiency. Excess of glucose infusion, excess of carbon dioxide production result in glucose metabolism. Excess of lipid infusion, the lipid particles may be accumulated in the lungs and reduce the diffusion of capacity of respiratory gases. So it should be ideally weighed accordingly. Liver toxicity, also known as parenteral nutrition cholestasis. It causes severe cholestatic jaundice, elevation of transaminases, and may lead to irreversible liver damage and cirrhosis. Multiple causes have been proposed, including high infusion rate of aromatic amino acids, high proportion of energy intake from glucose, etc. And there is no specific treatment other than anticholestatic therapy. Intestinal bacterial translocations. The lack of direct provision of nutrient to the intestinal epithelia during total parenteral nutrition, trophism and altered permeability of the GI mucosa, thus compromising any potential recovery of the patient's ability for enteral feeding and allowing bacterial entry into the bloodstream. That leads to sepsis. So prevention is to provide minimal enteral nutrition supply to avoid minimizing this risk along with the total parenteral nutrition. Other metabolic complications include electrolyte imbalance, mineral imbalance, acid-base imbalance, toxicity of contaminant of the parenteral solutions. Catheter and tubing may become clotted or twisted and obstructed. Infusion schedule. Continuous parenteral nutrition, non-interrupted infusion of parenteral solution over 24 hours via central or peripherally inserted catheter line. What is the advantage of continuous infusion schedule? It is well tolerated by the most of the patients, require less manipulation, decrease nursing time and decrease potential for touch contamination. Other is cyclical parenteral nutrition. The intermittent administration of parenteral nutrition via central or peripheral venous access, usually over a period of 12 to 18 hours. Advantages is approximates normal physiology of intermittent feeding, ideal for ambulatory patients, allows normal activity and improves the quality of life. Disadvantages of it is not tolerated by critical ill patient and require more nursing manipulations, increased potential for non-touch contamination and increased nursing time.